welcome to everybody from all over the world. It's great to see you. This is going to be a fantastic one. I'm really looking forward to this. The learning spaces in the third millennium webinar for everybody. As we're learning, like I say, please remain muted, put questions in your chat. And as we're going on, we can look through questions, and we've got some amazing speakers that I'm sure you're going to want to ask questions of. And we've got some exciting things to share with you too. So welcome new members, and welcome to people who aren't members yet.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us live for our Global School Alliance virtual conference. We are the 9th conference in, do you believe it? Again, it's amazing to see familiar faces from all around the world. From day one, we've had such a highly engaged group of leading educators from all around the world who have joined us on a monthly basis to see what's going on, to join once again to share great ideas and theories and also best practice. We are, as I say, the 9th conference in. We've got some special events lined up for the 10th. But we also have some really exciting launches for you guys today. My colleagues will be going into a bit more detail around the exact ways that you guys can get involved. One of the most exciting elements is that our online communications platform and partnership platform will be launched officially today. I just want to thank all of you who have pre-registered to be a part of that. It's a very, very exciting development. It is early stages for Learning Unleashed, but we have some really exciting plans for the development moving forwards. Again, from a UK point of view, we have recently been given our updates on our roadmap out of our current COVID-19 lockdown, which has given the entire country a great positive impetus to looking at the future. If all things go as they should, by the summer, the UK will be open for international action once again. So we are all super excited to see our international programs get reborn into the year 2021. I'm super excited to be able to share with you guys some exciting developments with our virtual partnerships program. And there'll be some details coming out very shortly, which will precede what from my point of view, is one of our most impactful programs we run with our sister school program, which will essentially allow us to work very closely with you guys in setting up deep and meaningful partnerships with schools all around the world to be able to engage online using Learning Unleashed, to be able to send teachers, leadership all around the world to really learn from one another, and ultimately to get students immersing in one another's cultures once again. So I thank you all very much for being here. Thank our speakers. We have a real special lineup this month. Again, thank you all for being present and sharing your infinite wisdom with us. And I look forward to announcing some exciting events in what has become a really exciting educational environment to be a part of. So thank you all once again. I will pass you over to Tony and leave you in her capable hands for the rest of the conference.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for the intro. So again, I'm just introducing the Global School Alliance. I think the majority of people on here are members, and it's great to have you back again. And those of you who aren't members, the whole point of the Global School Alliance is to support, is a community online to support and encourage and work together. And it's growing, and it's a fantastic place to be part of. So please join and be part of this amazing community. We're all in this community because we have shared goals. We all want to look at cultural diversity. We're all working in this small globe now, I think the pandemic has proved to us how interconnected we are, how small a place it is, and how much we can work together, and how easy it's getting now to work together. So we all have common goals, educational goals about learning Learning Unleashed, learning without barriers for the students today to prepare them for the new world. Our plan is to, as a community, support each other. Learning Unleashed, which James is going to tell us about in a minute, is going to be a fantastic tool to help the support, where we can all share resources, ideas, support each other, work on collaborative projects, and get people moving around the world and sharing ideas. So it's a place for you to share your voice. That's one of the points of being the membership. You've all got a voice, and we can all share and support each other, and ultimately start getting people moving around the world again. So there are various memberships. We can join as a member, which is generally for the school. So you can, any sort of society you're with, or mainly schools, are members. Then the ambassadors are more for individuals. For yourselves, any sort of educators can be an ambassador. And Ambassador Pros can be as where you can get a little bit more involved. You can help promote the Global School Alliance and other programs that are on board, and in future more about the Learning Unleashed as well. So there are 3 ways to join, and you can be all 3. You don't have to just be a member or an ambassador. You can be all of those. You can be a member for your school, you can be an ambassador, represent your school, and you can be Ambassador Pro, all in one go. And we also have a Facebook group. That's one of the best ways at the moment, where we're communicating with each other. It's a closed Facebook group, so you have to be a member of the Global School Alliance to be part of it, but some great content on there. We've got great blogs. We have speakers from all the other conferences on this conference can be on there to share their pearls of wisdom. And again, it's sharing. It's another way of sharing and supporting each other. So check that out. And I think we should be going live soon on there too, so people will be following us live through the Facebook group as well. So Learning Unleashed, I've been dying to hand over to James to share this with you, because we've been developing this for the past 6 months, and it's really exciting.
At True Education Partnerships, we are committed to promoting the World Economic Forum's Education 4.0 strategy. And 4.0, if you don't know, is intended to define new models of education for the 4th Industrial Revolution. And that's why we say clearly on the front of the website, as you can see, this is the front page of Learning Unleashed, that it's unleashing Education 4.0. And that's also why we've invited, and we're delighted to welcome our guests, Colette Cotton, Lord Jim Knight, and Professor Stephen Heppell, because they'll be talking to the theme of learning spaces in the 3rd millennium. So this is the platform. Now, if you go to the next slide, Tony, this is just an example of some of the groups that have been created already. You can see at the top there, coping with COVID, migration. We've got Colette's school already in St Mary's C of E Academy in Folkestone. We've got a STEAM challenge that I'll tell you about in a second as a group. And there's also a welcome group that we want everyone to sign up to today and say hi. So the new platform, it's a community of practice where members will be able to initiate joint projects with global schools. And we want to make that as easy and straightforward as possible. You'll be able to join virtual school partnerships. And you'll also be able to place and create groups to promote your projects and the work of your schools, or colleges or universities, because we have such a wide range now of institutions, all the way up from foundation and kindergarten, all the way up to further aid and universities. You'll also be able to access e-learning courses and micro-credentials, and we've got some very exciting partnerships to announce on that front. But as I said, also it's about creating groups. Now we've got a very special guest, Meena Patel. Meena, if you didn't know, she is the chair of the Global Video Conferencing Education Group. Meena, I hope that I've said that correctly. And she has got 2 exciting projects to talk about that we've created groups for. So if any members want to start these exciting video conference projects, she's going to tell you how to do that. So that's all I've got to say for now. Hopefully Meena is here because she would like to talk about these 2 projects.
Hello, James. Yes, I'm here, and thank you so much for inviting me and the speedy response you've had since I spoke to you on, I think, Monday. And it's great to see the two projects from Video Conferencing for Global Learning on the Unleashed platform. So I'd just like to speak to you all a little bit about them. Is this my slide next? That's brilliant. So the first global project we have, so a little bit about Video Conferencing for Global Learning first. So we have been running collaborations globally with schools for many, many years. So it's nothing new for us to be running a project like this. And the topic that we have running, so there's a bit of a deadline to register for this, which is this Friday. And this is the migration video conference. So it's all run through Zoom. We partner up and collaborate schools from across the globe with experts. So for this particular video conference series, which the first is on the 2nd of March, this one's for high school students, so for 16 plus. And we will be, the objectives for that will be to understand what migration means, and to increase the awareness and the access to the experts. So we've got experts like Dr. Crawford Brown, Dr. Williams, all fully renowned in the work and research that they've done on migration from the West Indies, and from Canada, Dr. Hasford. So they chair the meetings alongside my colleague, Renee Carver from Video Conferencing for Global Learning. So we aim to look at topics for any students who are studying history, and looking at socio-cultural contexts. We look at interconnectedness, mobilities, but the experts will explain all that over the different sessions on the different dates. But what you need to do if you are interested and you are working with students who are age 16 plus, you need to register, please. And I think if you go onto the Learning Unleashed project page, I think James has put the link up for registration. Thank you for doing that. And then after that, we will look after you. So we will contact you. We will put you in touch with the experts and the teachers and explain exactly what's going on, even though all the details are on there as to what will be expected on each of the sessions. So that's the first collaborative project that we have going this month. Then the second one, if we move on, is, so that's still about the migration. And the image there that you can see at the top, which has been cut, was a project we did back in July during lockdown here in the UK. And that was where we had students from Brazil, from Hong Kong, from here in the UK, and we all connected with the former bodyguard of Nelson Mandela. And they got to speak to an expert. They all got to speak about Black Lives Matter. We all had a debate online. So so we've done similar things before. So if we move on to the next slide. So this is the next one. Now this one is for students who are aged from 9. So we've got primary school all the way up to high school to 8. So there are 3 conferences. So the first one is on March the 4th. As you can see, there are 3 dates for this one, and each of those has a separate registration form. So we're running those from 9 a.m. UK time all the way to 9 p.m. because we're going around the globe. And what we will be doing with that, we are pairing up, let's say, a school here in London with a school in New York State, or a school in New York State with a school in Hong Kong, and with the same age groups. And we are going to be talking about COVID and helping young people understand and reassure themselves, I suppose, about the fact that it's happening to everyone around the globe. And we give lots of support material. So there are specific questions that the students present and answer. So how the pandemic's affected them and how has their school lives changed? And it's different in different countries. How has, what has happened to them since the pandemic in their home lives? And also what they will remember about the pandemic. What are they going to, what advice do they have for other children around the globe if they were going through a similar thing again in the future? So those are the questions. It's all on the Unleashed site. The link links back to my blog that I write. where there's more the similar information is back on there. And we will partner you up. We will hold your hand all the way, make it as easy as possible. It's on Zoom, so it can't be any easier. We're all used to using video conferencing now. And I think it's a great opportunity for your students to talk to each other. And what better technology to use than video conferencing to connect students together, especially at a time like this. So that's all from me, James. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And just to add to that, the links for those you will find in Learning Unleashed. So all you have to do is to create your account on Learning Unleashed, and then you can join those groups if you want to, as well as the STEAM group, and just sign up from there. So back to you, Tony.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, James. Yes, so that's just a taste of the sort of thing that's coming on Learning Unleashed. So watch this space, and you can contribute too. So as I say, it's a voice for everyone around the world. So if you want to help build Learning Unleashed with us, please contribute and talk to James or one of our members of staff.
Before we're going on to Tony, I just wanted to do a quick screen share for the Learning Unleashed.
Stop sharing.
Member.
You want me to stop sharing?
It's cool. I can just nab it off here.
Okay.
So guys, just as we've been speaking, which let me jump on here, which I think is super cool. And again, it pays super tribute to the community that we have with the GSA. We've been speaking about Learning Unleashed for all of 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and we've already had some of you super proactive people go online and sign up to your accounts. By all means, whilst we're on here, dive in, have a play with it. You know, use the chat and use this opportunity for asking any questions that you may have. One of the most exciting things for me about what this platform is going to allow is, you know, we've got about 1,400 members currently in the GSA. And what we found previously is obviously the Facebook group that we are actually live in now has been the only real platform that we've had available for you guys to connect and to communicate with one another. What Learning Unleashed will now enable you to do is not only through the group setups that we have, which will be thematic and based on either projects or about specific themes, and we'll be inviting people like Mina to come in and to discuss different projects within those groups, is also to connect with members online. And this is probably the best way that you can really start to connect with one another within the community. And for me, this is going to show, it's going to be the next stage from not just being, you know, an audience member in seeing these virtual conferences, but now you get to connect, you know, really well and really closely with all the other members in the GSA. So I would, again, once you have signed yourselves up, it's really easy just to go through in the member section and look to connect and message with any other member of the Learning Unleashed. And finally, what I wanted to just quickly have a look at is this news feed is going to be the kind of home page for all the different activities. So this is going to become a super vibrant place for you guys to keep checking in on over the next couple of weeks. The really cool thing is about the news feed is that this is open to the world. So once you're online, everything that you are contributing on here will be accessible and open to everybody else around the world. For the groups and for the blog and for the faculty, you'll need to be signed in to kind of access that. So please do jump online. Please do have a play around in the back end, and obviously we are going to be with you for the next couple of hours. So if there's any exciting questions that you may have or observations, please fire away. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thanks, Tom. Like I say, there's so much exciting stuff to cover at the moment that I want to get straight on to with our first speaker, who is Colette. So if I stop sharing, Colette, would you like to take the screen and go for it?
Do that. All right. Yes.
That's great.
Right. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, you're right, are we? Okay, right. Nice to meet everybody, and I can see there's a lot of faces that I know out there from lots of the schools I've visited over the years. So I've been asked to talk about virtual and physical learning spaces in the third millennium. A lot of it will be more to do with the physical ones that I experienced in countries, and I'm focusing on Malaysia and Taiwan, plus others that I've been to. Just a little bit about me. Just keep myself busy these days, but have been a teacher, I won't tell you for how many years, but have always done international work. So I'm really fortunate with having a huge experience. I was counting the other day, I think actually I have been in schools and taught in them, even if it's only for a few days, in 27 different countries. Right, so what is a learning space? So I did have a little Google search on it, and quite interesting what it says, but they seem to think that it's been designed by the instructor. So I've put a few questions there, which I know you'll probably all be able to read, because I don't really like to read from a PowerPoint. But what is learning? And does learning always need to have an instructor? Does everybody learn in the same way? And in order for learning to happen, does it have to be in a specific place? How much learning is incidental? And how much does location play a part in learning? And where do we all learn best? Virtually or in a physical place? So I've tried to look at some of those as I've done my presentation today. So put a few photos up here. Where is learning happening here? And what tools are being used? Right, we've got two traditional classrooms here, Key Stage 1, but this teacher here is actually from Malaysia. So she is learning what we are doing in the UK, and she's seeing how the children there are actually doing, I think they're doing some maths. So it's a double learning going on there. The one underneath is the same room, but the children there obviously are using very early computing skills with the B-bots, which are absolutely wonderful. They love finding the places around the world that we link to and starting their early programming. So another learning skill, but that could also be done at home, but that is done in school. The one at the top with the little boy there, he's holding part of our Weather Watch project, which we did with, I don't know how many schools around the world. He's showing what the weather was on the mobile phone in Folkestone, and I think it says 10 degrees. And at the same time, he's sharing it with a boy who's having to home learn in Malaysia because they've got school shut down, and it was 31 there. So you're using home technology, but you're also using physical technology in school, but using various different apparatus. And this is another little boy out in Malaysia who's done the World Weather Watch, but done it all at home. Amazing work, no technology there, except for his mother taking a photo to send it in, which was then sent over to me in school. So brilliant. And then we've got a little boy in India there with home learning. But that school, obviously, the parents have had to learn how to adapt to home learning and to take photos, which have then got to be sent back into school, and then the teachers will there send them on to me. So it's a long rigmarole that happens. And here we have our Taiwanese students, part of the Weather Watch, obviously learning in school, but learning outside. And they're actually using thermometers there and what have you. But really important to have all sorts of different types of learning for children to learn properly. So, do all learning spaces have the same importance? Is one better than the other? Should they be equal? It's interesting. This one here was actually happening in school, at my school, and I'd got a group of children that were talking to MENA countries, that's the Middle East and North African teachers, about well-being. So you've got some physical learning space, but it was all being done virtually. So different way of learning there, a mixture. Over on the other side, you've got some teachers where I was training them out in Malaysia, working together, but still using their mobile phone there to be able to get further information for ideas. Oops, can't get the next slide. Right, we don't all learn the same way. And when I looked this up, there were some that said there's 3 ways of learning, there's some that said there were 4. Here we've got 9 or more ways of learning. But I know I learn in several ways. I think most of us do, and our children learn in some ways. I mean, those of you that are all musicians, I expect music will have a really important part in the way you learn. Others are always at a book. I know some teachers that are always in books, but we've all got different ways of learning, and we've got to include all of those because our learning must be inclusive for children. Confucius, I think everybody must know that lovely saying by Confucius: I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, but I do and I understand. And I'm afraid as I've got older, I found that, number one, I hear and forget very quickly. I will see and I'll remember if I see something similar, but if I actually do it, I will remember it and I will understand. So that is a very important part for children for learning. Now here we've got some examples of doing physically in partner schools. During lockdown, this little, oops, Daisy, where are we going? This little boy over here out in Malaysia, he was actually planting onions bulbs, and his mother had taken a little video of him and he was explaining why he'd got the soil. And if you notice, recycled pots, old plastic bottles being used. Got an old-fashioned kind of tool there for digging up the not very healthy looking soil, but what they grow there is incredible. So he was doing that. In the middle here, we've got a group of our children that were in school who work with India, and they were actually making something called laddus, which is a little sweetmeat that they have in India, mainly during Diwali or something. Once they'd made them all, we then had a video conference where they were able to show the children what they'd made, even though they couldn't taste them. That's the next thing to come with virtual learning. Obviously at the top here are school in Taiwan. They were thrilled to receive cards from us, and they were busy sharing them with each other, reading them out, because English is an extra language for them out there, and finding where the place is and where they are all on the map. A lot of learning going on there. And here we've got a plastic bottle again being used in out in Malaysia, where the children are planting seeds, which will then go out into their school garden. So learning how to do things physically that they won't forget. But these children here are also learning physically. The old blackboard over at the top, that was taken some years ago when I was working in Nigeria. And the children had to do a little project, what they had for breakfast. Don't think they'd ever seen post-it notes before. And they actually came out of their places for the first time and stuck on the board what they'd had for breakfast in the right columns. But I don't think they'll ever forget that, because that was the first time that actually had something physically to come and do instead of sitting doing rote learning. On the diagonally opposite, got a little girl in Sri Lanka. We were doing a project when I was out there on zero waste, and she'd come up and was using the board. Now, schools across the world aren't going to stop using our traditional blackboards. Lots of them have just got walls painted in black, but it will be a long time before they've got the technology to be able to do everything virtually. Our Taiwanese children at the bottom are busy doing something by hand that they were then going to then take photos of and email it through so our children could read it. And the Malaysian teachers I were training, they were looking at a project that they could do on Malaysia, which was really good, really got them going. And just a little bit that I had to put a welcome from Malaysia in the, from Sri Lanka in the middle. Does anybody have any idea what those little flowers are made out of? They're actually made from pencil sharpenings. So I don't know who actually told them to do that. Our children were amazed that children in other parts of the world know so many things that we never think of over here. Incidental learning. How much of the learning we do is incidental? They certainly use their space everywhere out in Malaysia. As lots of the schools are on stilts due to the flooding and everything there, but all the way up. So you've got the writing in Malaysian, you've got the symbols, and you've got the English. And above it, but you can't see it very clearly, there's all the little places where the children put their shoes before they go into class. And that includes the teachers as well. I like the one in the middle, learning her tables. And then this bathroom, well, that was an incredible secondary school in Malaysia, where they do a lot of doodle art, and every single wall in the school is just covered in art and learning. And this was the cloakroom that the children used. Now, how inspiring is that for pupils' cloakrooms? Wonderful. And my school here at the bottom, we're just using a world map for finding actually where is Taiwan, where are these places that we hear about. So we have advantages of learning physically and virtually in all our partner schools. So we've done a huge weather watch project with Jordan. The children had all recorded things for a whole week, and then they were sharing it. But in order to make children really understand the difference, I'd got the children in our school to come in to the meeting in the clothes that they'd come to school in that day. So obviously it was quite cold here, but out in Jordan, it was, I think it was about 21 out there, and we were only about 9 or 8. So really helped them to show it, and talking then through a video conference, just so important, giving children a voice. Our children up above is trying to teach us some Hindu that he'd been doing in class and was doing it through the video conference. And then the little boy on the right, he is recording the weather watch, the weather details, but he's using his mobile phone to support him. So he's using physical and virtual work. This was a huge project I did a few years ago, the Barefoot Billion project, with 75 countries across the world who physically mailed in pictures of bare feet that their children had drawn, but they were all shared on a collaborative website. And actually this was then being shown at a big church up in London, about all the children, obviously, that were living in poverty and had certainly not got quality education. Our current work on climate change, because the mail takes so long to get to some of these countries, year 5 were doing a handwriting lesson, but this was then all sent via email to the school out in Malaysia, and they're asking about deforestation, palm oil, orangutans and things like that. And then on the right, we've got artwork to do with global warming, which has come in from schools from Jordan, from Italy, from Malaysia, from the UK, from Romania, from Tunisia, everywhere. So they've sent it in, they've created it in school, but it's been posted collaboratively on a website for everybody to see. Virtual learning in partner schools and at their homes during schools closure. Here in India, they have put up on their whiteboard a letter that we've sent in that they're able to read. The girl below in India is having to work from home on her laptop. Usually they have to go into school they start their lessons at home on online learning, but they should normally be in their school uniform. Whereas this time, because it was a Christmas theme, they were allowed to dress up at home for that. Someone in the middle doing some maths at home, and we've been having some digital art done. Now, these are the children that have got the devices in order to help them learn like that. Sorry, gone back a page too far. But many pupils were using their technology to enhance their learning and to share with their teachers. So for the weather watch, this little girl here was obviously using her iPad to take pictures of the weather. Then she was looking at the cloud finder to see what the type of weather it was, what were the clouds like. So really good there. And this little boy had done a practical thing of the weather for us, but it had all then been photographed, sent through to his teacher, which was then sent through to us, which was then put on the shared website. But virtual learning, as you were saying earlier, of what hopefully this programme will be able to do with Global Schools Alliance, it enhances the work with our partner schools that are thousands of miles away that we're never likely to get to. So we've done numerous projects with Ruifin Junior High School in Taiwan. The teacher there has just moved to another school, but is still working with us. But I do like, I am having fun with this. I do like her comment. She says at the end, they have found that no matter where people are from and how they are different, they are like family when doing the projects online. And they did this lovely presentation for which they won an award for the whole of Taiwan for what they had done online. And I know they're going to be watching this presentation later on tomorrow. Virtual learning due to school closures, major bonus. It has united the world with the same global problem, needing a global solution. And the teacher from Malaysia wrote, during COVID-19, we have felt really isolated, but working with other schools in different countries opened doors to so many opportunities and brings us closer together as we realise we share so many similar problems. I thought that was just lovely when it came in, because we do tend to all be very insular in our own countries, and this has made everybody work together. And this was another teacher from India who wrote a lot about how they would still be working with us. So we did a wonderful RE project with them, asking them about what they could tell us about Hinduism. And so the children did all sorts of work which they sent us on Hinduism. Incredible. However, there are disadvantages of virtual learning due to school closures. This little girl in Malaysia, obviously done a picture of it all, but no access to school for so many children. No social interaction with peers or teachers. There was a great feeling of isolation. I know my grandchildren, two of the two boys that aren't in school, they can't wait to get back to be with their peers and friends. They're fed up with looking at a screen all the time, even though we do practical work. Access to digital learning is very difficult for disadvantaged families. Many have got very poor internet connection at their homes, and lots of them are squashed. They haven't got anywhere for working. There's a whole family working in one room. How difficult is that if you've only got a mobile phone? And it is difficult to engage pupils with online lessons, whether they're SET or Zoom. And the other thing is, if they're younger children, they do need adult support to help them through it all. They can't do it all on their own. So real learning needs to be both physical and virtual in order to succeed. This was part of what it's like to be in Islam, what it's like to be a Muslim today project, with lots of countries that where they have Muslims. And this was the cards our year sixes had actually made in class to do with Ramadan, asking questions that they sent out to Tunisia, Jordan, lots of countries, and they've got this wonderful reply. They had a whole lot of cards back. And I think the look on that little boy's faces and all his friends says it all, why you still need a physical space. Zoom meetings, I've been having a lot of these with Malaysia, who have been looking at how to do climate change, the resources, also with support from the British Council. World weather, more work we've been doing. So I was working with the teachers, telling them how they could access the work and what we were going to do with it. So that was very useful Zoom meeting, which we wouldn't have had if it hadn't been for COVID-19. This one, I won't put the link through now because I'm aware of the time. This was, we had 19 countries that managed to complete our World Weather Watch project, which is always done during International Education Week. And we made a book of it all, and the link is here, but just to the first page going to open for me. Hope it's not too long. Is it coming? No, if it's going to be too, oh yeah, first page. Right, it started with 23 countries from 4 continents. Those were the countries, and it finished with 19. And they told us where they had collected all the data from, which was really interesting, really good that was. And this is what the sheets look like. So children completed it, they sent in artwork, pictures of what they were doing, and we've put the book together. Had wonderful work from Finland, and also even up from Lapland, where Father Christmas is, which the children thought was great. So just some of the work that's come in, Holland, Germany, so many countries. So that was good, and I've got to get out of that. Hope I don't lose us. Right, that's fine, I'm back. And the other current project we're doing is climate change, which was 20 challenges set by the British Council, which we are very involved with 24 countries around the world at the moment. Why should there be a global education for everyone? This is what children have written, not me, not their teachers. This is what the children have written. So Taiwan, we can talk about environment with foreign partners and tell everyone recycle is important. I'm happy to join. Making things with recycled material is very interesting. I'm happy that we can help the earth with students from other countries. And Malaysia, they won, not only obviously English was important, but they were able to share ideas how to protect the earth with other children across the world. And in Jordan, it's kind of enabling people to come together, planning, critical thinking, communication skills, teamwork with other countries, plus learning other cultures and introducing your own cultures to others. And just a few more what people thought, why we should be doing it. It was cool to compare weather. But these are children and why they think global learning is so important. And it needs to be, as I said, both virtual and physical in order to succeed. And also with the virtual, you are giving children a voice. There was a project many years ago called Giving Children a Voice. All our children in all these projects have been able to air their views. They've either done a video, which we've then put online, shared online, or they've done video conferences. And we've also been learning a bit of French from our partner out in Tunisia, even though we weren't very good at what they were saying because the connection wasn't very good. So they ended up writing it for us. So we've now got Notre Planète Terre nous est chère, which they thought was lovely. Our planet Earth is dear to us. And I thought, what a great strapline for a project. Really, really good. And they have something similar in India, which is Earth Day. So all the children had to do something at home. They then sent their pictures in, which were then sent over to me for the website. So, British Council, connected by learning. We certainly are connected by learning. It's vital there should be both virtual and real learning spaces in the third millennium. There should be global work for everybody because it shows similarities, differences, cultures, but it also helps children to have empathy with other people across the world. This was one of the certificates we got from our partners in Malaysia because we had some teachers over to us. But I like what they've put at the bottom, transforming education through collaboration and global learning. That's what learning should be about, to transform it for our youngsters and so that they can collaborate and work with each other. And I can't think where I got this from, who sent it in. I have no idea who Mrs. Calamante is. I would have thought maybe it's somewhere in Spain, Portugal, I don't know, but I love what she has written. Oh, will that stop doing it? And just a thank you for listening, and special thanks to schools in India, Sri Lanka, Kenya, Nigeria, 2 lots in Malaysia, Jordan, Tunisia, and my own school that we have managed to have all the photographs from. So thank you very much for that. I will stop sharing.
Thank you, Colette. And again, that epitomises all what we're trying to do here as a global community as well. Thank you so much. Are we all right now, Lord Jim Knight? Are you okay to take over and present?
I certainly am. Thank you.
You.
So let me get you all connected up to my screen, which hopefully will respond sensibly. Good afternoon or evening or morning or whatever it is, wherever you are. Very lovely to join you, and thanks for inviting me along. And lovely to follow Colette's wonderful global tour of sharing that's going on, that she's facilitating. Really, really inspirational, and equally wonderful to be sharing a bit of time with Meena Patel, who's a good friend who, there are very few people I've come across who really understand the pedagogy of how to teach over video. And what Meena was promoting earlier on, I would strongly recommend to you. She's a genius when it comes to these things. And then my old, or not so old, friend, Stephen Heppell, who is following me, who has always been an inspiration and will have a lot more to say than I possibly can about the main theme of this session around learning spaces. Yeah, for those that don't know me, I'm a recovering politician in the House of Lords. Over 10 years ago, I was responsible for schools in England, including a wonderful investment program called Building Schools for the Future, where I thought a lot about school spaces and how we integrated technology in those. And there was some reflection to be had on that, but I'd have to say in my own country here in England, I'm not sure we've moved much further forward than where we got to with learning spaces and building schools for the future. But at the same time, when I was minister, we were also thinking quite a lot about learning outside the classroom and trying to get coalitions of organizations, from wildlife trusts through to country homes to whoever was interested in engaging with young people and children from school and getting them out of the class and learning outside or in other settings. And I think that's having a bit of a new lease of life. And I'll talk a bit more about that towards the end in terms of some of the stuff that I've been thinking about in that respect. But a lot of what I've been thinking about since being a minister has been around digital technology and what we do with that and how we get the right blend, which Colette was talking about. The answer is both. It's not either physical or virtual, it's both, and getting that blend right is so much a part of it. And there are times when you want to do one, and Stephen was always an inspiration with his Not School project for those young people for whom school really wasn't working out, and he created a wonderful opportunity for them to be able to engage. Mohammed, turn off your mic. And thanks. And so there are opportunities, and obviously there are wonderful things that go on where you're just in a physical space, but I'm a big believer in the blend. But where I really want to start is to think about the beginnings of what we've learned from the experience of COVID, which has been unlike anything anyone could have really imagined. And the first thing to say in respect to COVID to all of you who are educators, who are teachers, who lead teachers, who support teachers and provide services to teachers, and who are parents of learners, is a huge thank you. I think the last year has been amazing in terms of how it's shown quite how professional our teachers are and what their commitment is and their ability to innovate in a way that if I'm honest, I thought that maybe teachers were fairly conservative, fairly stuck in their ways, not politically necessarily, but certainly culturally. And yet they've proven me wrong. They've been able to innovate and find new ways of doing things using totally different environments that they were very uncomfortable with, they weren't trained in, and they had to pick it up and run with that particular ball really quickly. And they've been an inspiration, and they've found a lot of stress. It's been very difficult, certainly in this country, and I'm sure around the world. And I absolutely pay tribute to them, and with them to the parents who have been doing their fair share of homeschooling and working alongside parents. And I think there's a really interesting thing that's emerged. So beyond a blurring of the time for learning and the space for learning, because of course we now realize that through lockdown that kids could be learning kind of any time of day or night, and they always were and they always will be, but the sort of formalized bit of schooling we've suddenly discovered we can be much more flexible about. And some kids really like getting up early in the morning, getting the schoolwork done, so they can then do something as they see it probably more useful with their day in the afternoon and the evening, or they might want to sleep in and catch up with their learning a bit later on. And that's all fine, assuming that they've got the advantage of being able to have the technology in the first place. The place clearly is more flexible, but I think there's been another thing that's happened, which has been this new flexibility that we found around who is leading the learning, and it's become more learner focused. And I think that's a really exciting development, where learners have been a bit more in the driving seat and have been able to influence a lot more when they're learning. And there's a lot for us to reflect on out of all of that. And in my case, I am a proud stepfather to Coco, who is 9 years old, and she's in year 5. In the first lockdown, she was in year 4, and we were lucky enough to escape to the farthest reaches of the United Kingdom, to the Orkneys, where we were able to look out every day on the Atlantic Ocean, next stop Canada, and have a spring over 3 months. I don't know who it is I can heckle. It's just heckled me, but whoever it is, turn off your mic as well. And the inspiration that we had of a 3-month spring on the ends of our country, every day, as we are now actually here in Southeast London, when we're out for our morning walks and exercise, noting the difference on a daily basis, because our horizons have been narrowed somewhat because we can't go very far. But that means that we see the day that the crocuses came out, and we see the day that the daffodils started flowering, and we see the day that we've heard the wren singing for the first time. And our relationship with nature and the learning that we got from nature, through a flexibility around when we think that learning is taking place, because as a parent, and my wife as well, we were leading the learning. So that meant that in the day-to-day lives that we were leading, there was a relevance to the learning that we had to find, and that Coco has really responded to. That said, as Colette said, she's counting down the days left till she can get back and socialize with her friends at school. And that's the sort of the big downside for me, that we all need to reflect on as we think about schools reopening. They'll be reopening here with 7 more days of homeschooling in England. But there's been a massive mental health consequence for young people, and not every child has had access to technology. Not every child has been fortunate enough to have parents who are hugely engaged. And we've seen an increase in abuse, we've seen an increase in child poverty, we've seen an increase in child hunger, we've seen a significant increase, an extra 1.5 million mental health needs amongst children and young people in England. That's a huge thing, which teachers aren't necessarily trained to deal with. I'm sure they will find ways of responding, but like others, I don't like talk of catch up. I don't want to put pressure on teachers and young people to believe that they've got to do 2 years of learning next year when they've already got a mental health crisis. What we need is a reset, not a catch up, and an opportunity for people to feel a release that, actually, we've gone 2 years without exams. So if we go another one, it doesn't really matter. and let's find a reset that allows us to get healthy in our heads, healthy in our hearts, loving each other once more, and getting into a place where we can then think about learning in a positive way rather than as the thing that we're panicking about. Because when we went into COVID, we had all sorts of other problems with our school system. And here's Coco. I think this was on her 9th birthday that I took this photo. And when I talk to children, normally a little bit older, if I'm fair to Coco, these are some of the things that they're saying to me. Yes, school is all about tests, and that's an English problem, but I don't think it's exclusively an English problem. And we know that around a quarter of young people find tests really stressful. If we're sort of trapped currently in my country anyway, in a sense that schooling is in some kind of algorithm whereby you have to do really well in these tests. And then if you do well enough, then you can go to university. And if you go to university and do well enough in their tests, then you'll get a lovely job and you can be secure in that job because you've been to university and it'll be great. And you can get a 25-year mortgage and a final salary pension, and then you'll retire in your mid-50s when you're my age and life will be sweet. And you'll have been able to look after your kids and it'll be wonderful. Now, of course, that's all gone. I'm 55, I'm on my 5th career. I went to a great university, I did well in my tests, but I've had to be agile, I've had to be flexible. And now things are changing, employers are changing the way they're hiring. They're starting to hire talent younger. They're not looking for qualifications on a CV so much. They're looking at what people can do, and they're getting more sophisticated. And so there's still a good case for going to university, but £50,000 worth of debt in my country is a lot of debt to take a risk on. And then you might get a degree that qualifies for you for a job that then the robots take away, and that's a bit of a worry. And does that mean that my qualifications will be worth less or even worthless at the end of it all? And then there's a climate emergency, and then people are asking me why we're all so unhappy. And what we really can't afford to do, and I'll talk about this a bit more in a minute, is we can't afford to allow a health crisis and a jobs crisis and potentially, talk of a learning crisis to then be added to with a climate crisis, in the sense that there's all of these things that are out of my control that I can't manage. We need to give young people the opportunity to influence them. And one of the things that I've been working on lately is led by a friend of mine called Nicolas Sadarac, who's a big burly Frenchman. And he's worked out, first with something called École 42, School 42 in Paris, and now with 01 EDU, a way of training people, adults, with no prior attainment, so they don't need any qualifications, they don't need to have even been to school, with no lectures, no teachers, no qualifications, but over 2 years for free, training them to be full stack software engineers. And the employment rate's 100%, and they're getting a starting salary of £50,000. And that's exploding everything about what we think about education, because there's no prior attainment, there's no qualifications, there's no teachers, and yet it works really well for that particular skill. So that's just a reason to question what we're doing. And we're opening schools through 01 in Kazakhstan, in France, in Cape Verde, in Estonia, in Israel, in London. It's very exciting and it's highly disruptive. So what is the model and what space does it need? We know that the half-life of skill is accelerating. So we know some of these qualifications are running out of currency. We know that there's some question around whether or not school, basically being a preparation for university, is the right model. And that alternative models of higher education are starting to emerge, like the one I've just talked about. And that means that the model of how we do schooling starts to implode, which is why I was pleased to hear earlier on you talking about the World Economic Forum and what they've been doing. Recently in my country, people from across the political spectrum in our parliament and other leaders are saying, actually, we don't need exams at 16. Instead, we need a commission to think about how we might do school completely differently. So I do think that we are at a tipping point, and that we can't put the genie back in the bottle that's been opened by COVID. And that now is the time for voices like this one to think about how we're going to drive the change. And that means, first of all, trusting teachers as professionals, and trusting young people to work together, and to work together with parents as a new latent force for learning that's been released by COVID. And they'll work out the right space. It might be inside, it might be outside, it might be online, it might be in a physical classroom. And to do that, and to use that trust towards something that's been adjusted, rather than just passing a bunch of exams as a sift, as a filter to get onto the next level of exams and the next level of qualifications. And so one of the other things that I'm working on is a project with a US-based organization called Purpose, which we're calling Future Proofed, which is all about climate education. And it's based on that premise that I talked about a little bit earlier on, in a way, and that that Colette was talking about a little, which is, most students across the world, and the OECD have done some great work on this, really care deeply about climate change, but most don't believe they can do anything about it at a global level. And only 57% think they can do anything about it immediately at all. And that lack of empowerment, on the back of all the other mental health problems I'm talking about, is 1 in 6 school-aged children in my country struggling with a mental health problem, according to our National Health Service. We can't add the climate to being another pressure on them, as I've said. So we need to empower young people. We need to trust them. We need to give them, we need to nurture their sense of agency and their ability to do things inside and outside their school community. There's a study recently that said if only 16% of children of high school age in middle and higher income families were engaged in projects in their schools to reduce carbon emissions, then we would save 19 gigatons of carbon by 2050. There's a massive latent possibility of us being able to help young people change their world and make it sustainable and move to net zero schooling, I would hope, by 2030. That's just an example of a campaign about giving young people agency, which is where I think we need to leapfrog to, thanks to COVID, as the opportunity that we now have. And I'll finish just with this picture of Coco on the rocks on Orkney, where, I won't give you the geological chat about the stones that she's walking on that, are 1,000 years old, 1,000 million years old. But she was there, and the learning that she was having as we were scrambling around every day on those rocks, alongside coming home and using Century Tech to do her English and her maths and her science, and going online to learn drawing with Rob Biddulph, and doing PE with the extraordinary Joe Wicks. We were doing the blend. We were living the dream in a way. The only thing that was missing was her friends, and that's what she's looking forward to getting back to in 7 days' time. But my big message to you, attached to the theme of this, is trust each other, trust teachers, trust parents, trust children. Guide them, stretch them, make them struggle. That's how we learn. Struggle ourselves. It's all a struggle, but feel the joy of the flexibility of time and space that we've now got, and that we've now seen that we can do, and the innovation that we now see as possible really quickly. And let's make the future happen for these young people on the basis of that trust. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you so much, Jim. That was amazing. Are you okay to stop sharing?
I can.
There have been lots of sort of, it's stimulated amazing amount of chat in there, and it's so right that it's actual, I think it's personal qualities, your resilience, your flexibility, your willingness to adapt is what we need to be teaching them, because things change so quickly. And the problem is the world is changing quicker than our education systems, which is a bit frustrating. Change is painful for some institutions. There was one question from a David Smith, actually, who was asking about what your views were with the government withdrawing from Erasmus+. I don't know if you wanted to answer.
Well, I think it's pretty shocking that the Prime Minister would have promised that we would stay in Erasmus a year ago, and then let us down with that withdrawal. And I know people will try and make the best of what they're putting in place instead, but it's on the cheap, frankly, and it's not going to be anything like a like-for-like substitute for the Erasmus program, which we will miss sorely in my country. And one of the things I loved about what Colette was doing from Folkestone, which is, for those that don't know, the geography of England is right on the English coast and overlooks the English Channel to France. And the fact that we've put a barrier across between Folkestone and the French coast is such a tragedy to me. And to see her responding by connecting people around the world is an inspiration. And it's for us working in education to do more of that in order to overcome some of these ridiculous artificial barriers that we've chosen to put in place in my country, and make sure that young people's minds are open to the possibility and the excitement of global exchange.
Fantastic. Again, that is exactly, I think there's a void there which we can all step into now. We've all got the opportunity, especially if we build a community like this, where we can maybe fill that void and work on something that's useful and fit for purpose again. Like I say, unfortunately, we need to be careful how I'm saying this, but some of the lessons that children are learning now are lack of confidence in our government and what promises are made and don't seem to be fulfilled. But I will get off my hobby horse and introduce Professor Heppell, who I'm sure has got some amazing things to share with us as well. Stephen, can I hand over to you?
No, absolutely you can. And Jim, I enjoyed that enormously. I think my talk is just going to say what Jim said, and off. But I want to think a little bit about some of the details. Some of the agency people listening are going to say, "What do I do? What can I go back to my school and do today?" So we'll tiptoe into some of that as well. I'm not going to do slides, but if you run me on speaker view, the images I use will be, appearing behind me, if you see what I mean. So the bigger the version of Stephen you have, the better, probably for once. Although I have to say, under lockdown, I seem to be getting bigger on my own, which is slightly alarming. It's a curious thing, but educational change seems to be happening on a 75-year cycle, and it's a bit of a surprise, really. The sort of 1800s, certainly in Europe, were dominated by church schools, Sunday schools, kids going to church to do their Bible study and make sure they had the right stories. Other books were available in other cultures, but the important thing was that you knew the protocols and the stories. By the time the 75 years had passed, or 3/4 of a century, we were deep in the Industrial Revolution right across Europe, in Australia, North America, in a lot of places. And at that point, it was employers who were saying, you know what, we need people in the workplace who can tell the time and measure things and have a bit of literacy. So bang, compulsory primary education swept the world really at that point, and did all right really up until the Second World War. Second World War was a torrid time for children in the UK and elsewhere. I mean, our kids were evacuated from their homes for 2 or 3 years. I mean, never mind lockdown for a couple of terms. They were off and away and sent off to hill farms in Wales, to live. The parents were still in East London. They were bombed. They were hiding in shelters. Of course, similar experiences to kids in places like Syria and so on recently. But that was a terrible time. And Is that Coco? Good to see her. God, she's growing, Jim. So yes, the time sort of whizzes on, and after the Second World War, people came back together and started to think, hang on a minute, they thought maybe education isn't fair for everyone. You know, the kids who'd been evacuated from East London to other places realized that other kids were getting a better deal, and there was a sense of fairness really sweeping the country and sweeping certainly Europe. And compulsory secondary education, tripartite for us, but other models were available, all came in. And you kind of think about this. It was, first of all, it was the church, then it was the employers, then it was families that were driving change. And here we are with the pandemic, 75 years on again. And make no mistake, this is as big a change in our education systems as those previous times. And there's a heap of reasons for that. One reason being, as everybody's articulated already today, Jim, Colette, everyone really, I mean, kids are doing different things. What have they done with their out of school learning experiences? Well, I was talking to somebody local just the other day. She said, my son hasn't done a damn thing his school set for him the whole time, you know. On the other hand, he's just replumbed the bathroom and he's now replumbing the neighbour's house. And he's 13, you know. So, you know, he picked up. So my own little, I live with a 4-year-old and a 7-year-old grandchildren, in my case, a bit older than Jim. And, you know, they got obsessed by sailing because I'm a sailor. And the little one, you know, spent most of the time sailing. Look, here she is enjoying her outfit. I mean, you know, look, she's tiny. She's absolutely tiny. But she went on to do all her formal qualifications for sailing. It's only a little cheap little boat, you know, and was spotted by the national authority who said, she's doing qualifications at 7. She's not supposed to do till 14. And they bought her a boat, you know, and thrown coaching at her. And this is all in lockdown, you know. Now, almost everybody has got stories to tell like that. It's kind of interesting to think back to that last golden generation of the wartime kids, because what happened when, because they weren't doing their exams, they were all over the place with their learning. And of course, that ability to cope with the unexpected built resilience, it built ingenuity, it built, I mean, it didn't just think outside the box, they'd be bombed outside the box, you know. And who came out of that generation? John Lennon, Vivienne Westwood, Clive Sinclair. Oh, Angelique, you need to turn your microphone off there, love. And so on. I mean, a whole host of, thank you, a whole host of the people who rebuilt our economy after the Second World War, rebuilt the world after the Second World War, changed music forever, changed a lot of our culture forever, changed fashion, changed engineering, changed science, changed. And you know what? Here come the COVID kids, because they've been out for a year. Boy, have they developed resilience. And the only problem they face really is constant bombardment from, over here is the BBC principally, but people just telling them that they've failed. You know, they're going to be the kept behind generation. They're going to be earning less money. They're going to be catching up. Can we spend enough money to help them catch up? The truth is, how can we catch up and keep up with them? How can we build an education system that's agile enough to keep up with where they've been? Because where they went with their learning, they didn't go for breadth. They didn't say, right, I'm out of school for a bit here. Let me make sure I do 15 minutes on the Vikings. Let me make sure I do 20 minutes on fronted adverbials. They said, you know what, I really want to get into space. I'm going to build rockets. Look, I'm sitting here in my little office. What do I do? What am I making? Gunpowder, you know, because there's nothing a 7-year-old likes more than exploding rockets up into space. You know, it's so we're in a very interesting position, and let's think of it about how that impacts on the learning they're returning to. Because exactly as Jim said, if we don't give them agency, we don't give them the opportunity. I'm not talking here about learner voice. People talk about learner voice all day. Learner voice is usually a school council with 10 kids on it that the others don't like very much, and somebody takes the time to ask them about the toilets. I'm talking about learner-led, and I'm going to give you some examples of what that really looks like. So we've been having fun. This was a project in, and I'll just pop down here below the screen a bit so you can see what's going on. But this was in Barcelona. We gave different schools different amounts of money to make over their learning spaces, and they were pretty brave with it. This lot in Barcelona, we rather thoughtfully gave them no money at all. So you can see, if you look at the space here, there's an interactive screen there, but it's cardboard just over my shoulder. Here's the head teacher here. You can see that there's a curtain to draw across to separate one part of the room from another, but there's no materials. It doesn't really draw across. There's a little three-dimensional, three-sided space down here in the corner, but it's made from chicken wire and brown paper. What was interesting about this was the flipping thing worked. Any which way you measure it, academic outcomes, attendance, engagement, arrival time, no matter what you picked, the room was better than the room they had before. What was going on, of course, was that the kids were role-playing better learning. They were imagining they were learning in 2030, trying to imagine what it would be like, and they were role-playing it. And it turned out, of course, that kids role-playing better learning is better than kids doing the learning we built for them of flipping course. So we thought, gosh, we'd better do something with these wonderfully engaged kids. So we brought them into the university. I'm a professor in UCJC in Madrid these days, Buenos Dias, and we brought them in and we gave them a great big space in the university, and we said, look, here's a space, we'd like you to make it over. And we gave them a whole heap of cardboard, and I'm just scrolling down to find a reasonably representative picture. This one will do. We gave them a whole heap of cardboard and said, make over the space you want. These 13 and 14-year-olds, and we didn't ask them for their opinion. This is really important for you. We said, do the research, talk to the other schools. You've seen throughout this whole session, have the ease with which you can talk to other schools, talk to them about the details of their learning, which we're going to look at in a moment. And you know what? The thing was so good, we built it for them exactly as they designed it in cardboard, and it was hugely effective. And because where do you get the CPD for that? Well, you can see here, I think, the CPD, this little tiny girl here in the middle, a little 12-year-old leading CPD for all the university lecturers and the students, because she knows how it works. By the way, what she was showing there was how to use a Skype bar, what the protocols are to work with other people. And look, there's a Skype bar and a Skype bar and a Skype bar. So there's the whole thing there about moderating your voice. This was pre-pandemic, so here's a 13-year-old showing people how to do online learning from the protocols that she's developed for working with others around the world. And it was startlingly effective. So we started thinking, well, maybe, just maybe, we'd better start looking at some of the details of those learning spaces that we're putting them into and asking them to do a bit of their own research. So we built some little boxes. Here's one. This is 3D printed. It's got a crummy screen on it, you can just about see. And we used it to measure most of the variables in the learning space to see what would optimize your cognitive performance. I'd found myself going into classrooms and watching. I've been a professor for over 30 years, taught in schools for a long time before that. Noticeable that children's behavior across a class is different. So we said, well, I wonder how much of that is the kids. I wonder how much is the physical environment. So we transferred those boxes into a proper little box. You can actually buy these, they measure the temperature, the CO2 in the room. They measure the TVOCs, those chemical smells that are part of your environment when you start. You know, if I take my whiteboard pen and smell it, what was that? A chemical blast, you know. So we started measuring all those things, and we were gobsmacked by three things. Number one, how had we not done this before? How had we sat children in classrooms without giving them the chance to make the classrooms the best they could possibly be for their brains? And I'll show you some numbers of just slightly. I mean, you'll have the same sense of alarm that we had when we saw them. So, you know, here's a typical school. You come in the morning, and we're measuring CO2 in this one. You come in the morning, you breathe. Hopefully, you breathe. The CO2 goes up because it's a class with 30 odd kids. The doors are shut, the windows are shut. The CO2 drops a little bit at break, and it goes up again till lunch. Goes down after lunch, stays high for the afternoon. The yellow line on here is the line above which your brain is impaired in its ability to work. So these kids come in, they're pretty sharp for registration, and then they're just about done really after that. You know, they're kind of gassed by their own emissions. Now, when we started giving them data, when we started saying to them, oh, here are the numbers, you know, you can do this better. I mean, we got some obvious surprises. So here you can see CO2 of the class. This is the measure before we gave them the numbers, and then this is the measure after we gave them the numbers. And you can see, I think, starkly that given their own chance to reduce the CO2, they pulled it down because they knew how much it impacted on them. And you know, you can do. How do you do that? How do you pull the CO2 down in a classroom? The answer is plants. Plants and plants is all you need. You just one plant per kid. Let me just take you back to me again. You know, one plant per kid. There's enough photosynthesis in that pot to turn around the CO2 from one kid during the day. And if I start to look and say, what does that look like when we do it across a lot of classrooms? I think you can probably see here, this is Asher Alexander's work from Dubai, some of the German schools, but we put a plant wall into 162 classrooms and nothing else. And you can see here, green is academic performance after, blue is before. Here you can see divided up by English and maths, orange is after, blue is before. But I don't know if you've got your screen big enough to be able to read the details in that little blue box. But every student had a subjective measure from the teacher about their fidgeting, their ability to move, all the things that you would look for as a teacher in children's behaviour. So it's really easy to start turning around the learning space that you've got because you arm the children to do it differently. And people talk about noise. Let's take a couple of minutes to look at noise. Well, one of the things we know is that it's quite hard to shush a group down a bit. But here we are in Islington. Whoops, Daisy. Here we are in Islington, and these two kids are in charge of noise. There's a decibel meter running here. They know that if the noise goes above about 72 decibels, they'll come round and have a quiet word with you, And tomorrow, might be Jim and somebody else might be in charge of noise, and day after might be Colette and one of her friends. We take it in turns to bring the noise down. And what that noise looks like when it comes down is remarkable, really. Here's a large open space classroom and a small closed one. The yellow line here is a very large group of kids, about heading for 100 children in a big space. And you can see they come in the morning, they all shout at each other, make a lot of noise, and then they get on with their work and they stay pretty quiet. They certainly stay under 65, 66 decibels. They have a little plenary session at lunchtime, go out for lunch, come back. There's another burst of noise. What did you do at lunchtime? Shouting across the big room. They get on and they go home. The blue line, which we find consistently, is a classroom with the door shut. People try to tell me that the big rooms are noisy. No, they're not, if you give the children agency. But this room, the blue line, with 27, I think, kids, they come in. They don't say much because they've sat in the same chair every day for the last 5 years, you know, not much to say. As they get towards lunchtime, they start getting a little bit truculent. They go out for lunch. The school, by the way, tells me they have to go to lunch early because kids can't concentrate for a long morning. No, they can't in that space. And then they come back, and the afternoon is noisy, shut up, noisy, shut up, noisy, shut up, noisy, shut up. Really noisy, sod off and go home. You know, there's no learning happening there. And it's the room that's doing the damage. The kids love to be given the data from all this, love to be given the agency, love to be given the opportunity to start doing this stuff better. And of course, what does this all start to sound like? It starts to sound like the aggregation of marginal gains. I'm lucky enough to do learning with the British Olympic team, the England rugby squad, with some other folk as well, which I'm probably not allowed to tell you about. But this is a very typical makeover of the learning space for, this is the girls hockey team for the Olympics coming up to Rio. You can see it's collaborative. The teacher has had to learn to put his hands in his pockets and stand back, not interfere. That you particularly have to teach men to do that. Women don't make the same interruptions, and you can see the girls are all focused very much on the problem that's being solved here. It's a penalty corner thing. The floor is part of the teaching environment. The whole room is part of the teaching environment. And if you don't know hockey, those girls went on to win gold in the Olympics, and they did it on their set pieces, which they learned in that space. Now this starts to get really interesting because we're starting to say, well, hang on a minute, you know, what about moving outside? What about COVID? What about the danger of high levels of aerosol in the classroom? And here you can see a contrast between 4 classrooms. The light blue line here is a classroom, the windows and the doors shut. The 2 middle lines are windows open but doors shut. And of course, CO2 is a heavy gas. It doesn't go out. It doesn't climb the wall to get out. It just stays in the room. And the bottom line is the only one that's really sensible, where they open the doors. In fact, that school taken the doors off and open the windows. And then, of course, you start mapping COVID, aerosol, virus-bearing water droplets. And it's exactly the same graph. So the only room that's safe in those 4 rooms is the bottom one with the windows and the doors kicked wide open. And kids love doing this stuff because it never ends. Here's a sign on one of our classrooms in Madrid that the kids put up, and you can see it says under construction. Well, Jim, it's not all the fun we had with building schools for the future, which let me publicly thank you for that a million times, because it was flipping inspirational, mate. But these kids are just building classroom for the future, and it's under construction because they will never finish it. They will keep on doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Now, I'm sort of conscious of time galloping on, so just a couple more things to show, but they're important. And one is the importance of movement. So when you start looking at the space you've got for learning, I go into classrooms and find teachers saying to their children, I want you to sit up straight and don't fidget. And of course, when you do, well, we can see what happens. Here's a functional MRI scan of kids' heads. They're doing a maths test. The kids on this side with the bright colors have been moving around the room actively. And then when the test starts, they sit down and start writing immediately. Kids over on this side have done what I've said 1,000 times as a teacher. They've said, sit down, collect your thoughts, take a deep breath, get ready for the exam. And you can see starkly where the active brain is and where the active brain isn't. And any which way you measure this, movement wins. You know, if I measure it during timetabling in the school day, here you can see we're measuring attention here against time, and the line at the bottom is a class where you spend most of the day in the same classroom. Kids are so bored they start to fade away as soon as the day starts. Top one is one where they're moving around within the classroom, moving in active zones, moving from one part of the classroom to another, because they have a carousel of activities. And the carousel of activities says bit of research, bit of collaboration, bit of presentation, keep moving. So we know all this. What's really interesting is, you know, typically we didn't act on very much of it, but the kids do. So what's happened here is, under COVID, learning has escaped. It's climbed out of the boxes we put it in. We put it in physical boxes, we put it in curriculum, we put it in timetables. It's flipping well escaped. And who's gone with it? The kids have gone with it. And, you know, they're often away. And the challenge for us is, how do we keep up with them? How do we go to where they're going? And one of the places they're going, of course, is out of doors. And, you know, I'm seeing a huge amount of excitement. Not, look, this is France, it's dreadful, isn't it? You know, these kids, they've got their 2 meter square on the playground, have to sit in for, I mean, it's just utterly dreadful. But what I'm talking about are people literally going out of doors, you know, just doing their learning, you know, wherever they, you know, doing their learning out of doors, doing their learning. I mean, here's me somewhere here, here's me doing CPD for head teachers, where we're doing it on the beach. Here's, rather excitingly, here's, and I know some of you are from certainly less wealthy places than Europe. This is your moment. This is absolutely your moment. The marginal cost of building better learning in places where you ain't got much learning is very, very low indeed. And so my daughter, Juliet, runs a beach school. I'm just looking for a picture of it, which I wasn't really planning to show you, but since I've mentioned it, I will. She runs a beach school, and the kids spend their time on the beach in Brighton. So there is no building. What they have got is great technology. They've got digital microscopes, phones, of course, buckets and spades, good teachers. And they are doing remarkable stuff. You see these jellyfish by my ear. They found these in the water. That's the jellyfish are in the glass, you know, like a sort of a tumbler, you know, and they found these, didn't know what they were. We're working with some marine biologists, so the kids sent off pictures of them, at which point the marine biologists all arrived in a bus, you know, all excited. Where are the jellyfish? Where are the jellyfish? Because the jellyfish do not exist anywhere in England. They're not, well, clearly they do, because the kids have found them. So they got all excited, and then they could, of course, they're postdoctoral marine biologists, they couldn't find the jellyfish. The kids said, oh, we'll show you where they are. They like to be in the towards the boating lake, and they like to be in the weeds because a lot of rainwater is not so salty in there. They seem to like it. The kids knew more about the flora and fauna of the place they lived than postdoctoral scientists. And there's a lovely transformation of the community happened on the back of this, because now if I walk down the pontoon to watch the kids catching crabs, kids are pulling the crabs out and they're saying, oh, this is a such and such crab, and it's a boy, or you can see this one's got some babies, and the kids are doing marine biology for their grandparents who are passing it on to the parents. The whole blinking town has gone learning mad in a really, really nice way, and indeed has just declared itself as a town whose characteristics are learning and history. Doesn't get any better than this. Kids infecting the place they live with the quality of their learning. And I could not be more excited at the prospect ahead. But you can kickstart all this. You can go off back into your schools, try a few things out, have a look at the light levels. I mean, I could go into a classroom. So I feel a bit conspiratorial, but I could go into a classroom, do a little drawing, and then put a few marks on the bit of paper, turn the paper over, and the teacher, good teachers, I'm a huge fan of teachers, the world ever. They start teaching, and I notice a kid yawns, and I touch the teacher on the arm and said, she was the first yawn. And then a couple of kids at the back corner start being a little bit, turbulent, truculent, and I point them out to the teacher. At the end of the lesson, I turn over the piece of paper and it says, the first kid to yawn will be sitting there. The first children to be naughty will be sitting there. And this is not about children having an attention deficit, although that is real, but not for very many kids. This is about the room, the learning environment, robbing the children of their attention. When we made over this space in a little coastal school just down the road from here, I mean, I'm having the time of my life with Chris Binge, doing a lovely school in Peru with several of you here. You know, we're doing stuff all around the world. This is just down the road. And we took over the space with a group of kids. I went in to say to them, who are the kind of kids who have lost their way a bit by lunchtime? They all pointed to the boys in the corner. The boys in the corner were pointed to the boys in the corner. You know, it's us. We're the ones, you know. And I said, who are the ones who are kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed at the end of the day when the mums come to collect you? Say, hang on, just going to finish my work. They pointed to a group of boys and girls over. Well, the boys and girls over by the window was broken. The light was great. The ventilation was terrific. The boys over in the bad corner, it was dark. It was hot. It was badly ventilated. It was noisy. There was a fan. So I got the kids to swap over, and one of the girls from the bright-eyed, bushy-tailed window said, I've only been here 40 minutes. I can feel myself going over to the dark side. It was a wonderful, comment. Your kids will love the challenge of making the learning spaces better. Your kids will love your trust. Keyword Jim gave you, your trust in them as agents of their change. Last thing, when we were talking to a group of children in Scotland on a Zoom, and I just said to them, well, you're coming to the end of your time here now. You're going to be going back to school. Hold up your hand for the number of days a week you think you need to attend school to still be close to your bestie and to see that teacher that's all, oh, so I want to be like her, how many days a week do you need to turn up to have all those good things? And everybody's been saying their kids can't wait to get back and see their friends. That's true, but do they need 5 days a week for that? Well, I'll tell you what, there were a lot of kids, on average, they said 2 days would be enough. No child said 5. To be an average of 2, plenty said 1, and a fair few said none. So one of the things I'm busy with at the moment, I'm building a school in Cork, and it's an international school, but it's a modeless school. There is no difference at all between being online or being face-to-face. You're still doing your project with a group of kids you're doing the project with. You're still giving mentorship and support to a younger child. You're still in reasonable touch with pastoral support, people who will give you counselling and support. It's all true. It doesn't matter whether you're on the premises or somewhere else in Cork. They've got a huge growth of the medtech industry. Population of Cork is doubling over the next 10 years. A lot of those families that are there know that they'll only be there for 2 terms, and then they've got to go to Switzerland, come back, got to go to Belgium. Medical technology is global, and they want their kids to stay in the school. They don't want to do boarding school. That's very old Harry Potter land, They want their kids to still be. And you know what? I've never met a company, a corporation, who had an online team and a face-to-face team. They just have people doing the job. And sometimes you talk to them online, sometimes you talk to them face-to-face. So for certain, we're heading to a world of modeless learning. For certain. If you want to build a school for 1,000 kids, you only need seats for about 300. For certain, some of those 300 will be learning out of doors anyway. Think what that does to the marginal cost of learning for the countries who haven't been able to afford learning before. Think how powerful that opportunity is. And what might the wealthier folk listening to this do Well, what we might do is prototype it early. You know, if you've got money and you've got stability and nobody's dropped a barrel bomb through your roof this term, what you might do is push out the boundaries. Nobody wins the Olympics by only doing what they did 8 years ago or 4 years ago. Question is, how can I hit my personal best? How can we as a community hit our personal best? How can we move every little detail? You only need to do it one at a time. Go back and sort the lights out. Go back and, you want to go to my website, heppell.net, it's all there. And the last thing to take away is, for those kids who've been given a hard time by how falling behind they are, you know, take them to heppell.net/golden. I put the URL in the chat early. It generates a certificate for them and reminds them that they are absolutely the golden generation, the most precious children we've seen since 1944. And I'll tell you what, Jim, you and I aren't going to be around for the next lot in 75 years' time. So we better make the best of this lot, haven't we? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stephen, that was amazing. Thank you. There's so many things come out of that. There has been actually a couple of questions in the chat. One of them was about stage rather than age. About, yeah, obviously they should learn 3K involve children of different ages working together, supporting. What are your feelings on that?
Well, I'm lucky enough to have opened a school, Stage and Age, Lindfield Learning Village in New South Wales. And I remember when we proposed it, I went to talk to a lot of parents about some of the things the school could have. Could be mixed age. The kids could have their own, their own timetables, they're absolutely in charge of their own pathway through their learning. Why would you make them wait? I mean, people here will remember maybe a teacher saying to them, I can't tell you that till next year, but you'll know that then, you know. What utter stuff and nonsense, you know. So I said to the parents, you can have all these things. And they said, well, we'll have it all. Let's do the lot. And they did. And Stage Not Age works brilliantly. I mean, obviously, you have to have a wise teacher part of that. You know, if you're a really good 8-year-old, you could go and sit with the 14-year-olds for reading. But if the 14-year-olds are reading kind of romance and vampires and something a bit teenage and boisterous, maybe you shouldn't be in there at your age, you know. So teachers still got to make judgments about social maturity, but not much else. And it's really interesting with our group of sex schools in Spain. We're just making offer this term to our older children to say, hey, do you want to do some university modules? We'll put you in for free. If you want to get used to university life, why don't you just do them now? And you know what? We've said it to the parents as well. We said to the parents, hey, you just lost your job in COVID. You need to retrain, get out of retailing, get into programming in Python. We'll give you the course. Here you go. You know, the school is the community. It takes a village to educate a child. It takes a community, but interestingly enough, now it takes a child to educate a village. And I think that's a really nice place to be. Of course, Stage and Age is the obvious direction for all this, but you still need teachers, wisdom and judgment.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Great answer. So we still need guidance, but we shouldn't be holding them back, should we, at all? There are loads of...
you can't hold them back.
Exactly.
You know, they're often away. Jim said the genius. You know, I mean, people have been saying to kids, do this, do that. I mean, computers, we haven't talked much about computers, although, you know, Jim and I, a lot of what we've done has been radical use of computers. Computers are really good at rule-based systems. Computers are really good at remembering stuff. Computers are really good at matching things and batch processing and remembering and being consistent. So what the hell good is it to have kids who are following rule-based systems and doing matching and remembering? And what we're good as people is deep knowledge. We're really good at ingenuity. We're really good at problem solving. We're really good at collaborating. We're really good at actually playfulness and adventure. So, you know, if those things aren't at the heart of what you're doing in school, you're just training kids to be overwhelmed by technology. Technology ain't ever going to do those. It could be a long time before technology is playful, ingenious, and does deep learning. So get stuck into that stuff.
Wonderful, thank you. Brilliant answer. Like I say, I think it's now, I mean, it's getting a bit later, but it is down to us to make sure we don't go backwards now, that the change has been, the impetus has been given for that change. We now, everyone here needs to make sure we move that change forward and make it more positive than going backwards.
Let me say this loud and clear. It doesn't matter whether you choose to do that or not. All you're choosing is whether you're going to have any kids to teach. Because if you don't do it, they ain't going to come. They really do have choices. You know, with half the world working from home, the childcare need for education has gone for 4.5 billion children, or whatever the number is, you know, it's just gone. So at that point, if you want them to come, you know, teachers, I love teachers. Teachers are full of, you know, all the good things, but we kind of forgot that. We did a project a long way back where we asked kids about their best learning experience. And you know what? It hasn't changed. It's unashamedly constructivist model of learning. You do things with others. You have an ipsative sense of your own progress moving forwards. You do things that are hard. Nobody said their best learning was doing something easy. You have an audience for your work, and an informed audience, a parent, a coach, a teacher. But you know what? The kids all reported, the adults all reported, their best learning came when the adult was a bit crazy. They were crazy about poetry, mad about meringues or whatever, you know, and passionate. Kids see passion and they see the eccentricity of excellence. And we extinguish those two things at our peril, because when they're gone, so are the kids.
Well said, well said. Thank you so much for that. We actually did this conference for the first time. We actually put a question out to our members to ask, you know, for some feedback from yourselves. Would like to say it's a voice for everybody in the community. So we put a questionnaire out there to people, and we said, in your opinion, how should I learn? How should learning best prepare children and adults for life in the third millennium? And we got some great responses. Thank you. I want to thank everybody who sent us in the response. We said it was a bit of a competition, so I've got the top three. I just want to share their answers with everybody else on here. And we did say there'd be prizes. So these three are going to get certificates and discount vouchers, and we'll let you know what you've won. So one of them was Mohammed Nadeem Akhtar Khan. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, because he said, I think it's essential that students see themselves as global citizens in our world today. This means they should prepare them for a world outside our immediate environment by making sure they can use the internet properly and are critical thinkers. Critical thinking is an incredibly important skill because it stops people believing the fake news and enables them to make their own minds up. I have no doubt that the world is becoming more connected, so students should be prepared with all the skills necessary and an open mind. Nice answer there. The second one I just wanted to point out was, all of us should understand that times have changed. Times are changing and the learning process has changed a lot during the years. I was a student during the communist period in Romania, and I have been teaching for more than 20 years, so I can say there have been lots of changes. If times change, students change with time. We as teachers should change as well in order to keep up with the times and make the students interested in our classes. Again, that was Diana Montiano, sorry. Again, it's reiterating what we're all saying here. And again, critical thinking seems to be a common point. So Rossana Berger Rubini, you also said opening his mind, working his critical thinking and showing him what leadership is like. In addition, teaching him what it means to follow the rules, respect the rules, learn about empathy and solidarity. It is, again, leading by example and giving them the skills for empowering them. So thank you all so much for participating in that. We had some great answers. And thank you very much for our wonderful speakers. I'm not sure if there are any other, what we'll probably do is we'll take the questions now onto the Facebook page and online, because I'm a bit aware, again, this has all been recorded, so this is going to be shared with members. So you'll be able to see this, relive this again, and again, it can continue on our Facebook. I'm not sure if James or any of my other staff were interested in putting a last minute comment, or...
Just to say thank you so much. It's been absolutely amazing. And we've got so many great comments in the chat, and this will all be reported in our new platform, Learning Unleashed. So please do sign on to that and continue the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. And
thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jim. Good to see you, mate.
And you. Cheers. Bye.